Hey guys, it's Walker Dybel, author of Buy Then Build and creator of the Acquisition Lab. Just in the last 30 days, I've done something that I do all the time, which is I talk to potential sellers of businesses and I've given them a ballpark valuation for their company. I do this all the time. And I talked with one individual and I told them the value of their company and they said, you know what, let's sell it, let's go. The second individual said, you know what, Walker, I was just checking in. It's really not enough to be interesting yet. I'm going to stay course. And the third one said, no way. My company is worth so much more than what you're talking about, and there's no way I'm going to sell for a price like that. Let's talk about it. The first one who said, okay, let's go ahead and sell right now based on that valuation, I valued the company at $65,000. There's a story there, but he was ready to move on. Number two, the guy that said, you know what, I was just checking in, I'm working on my business strategy, want to sell in a few years anyway. It was north of $50 million. And the third one who said, no way, like, am I possibly even selling at that number? I had valued their company at about 8 million. So what do these numbers have in common? Absolutely nothing. The point is that a lot of times we have to think about, what is the journey that the seller is going through, right? And trying to understand what they're going through from a buyer side is a bit nuanced, right? And so when there was a 4.5-year period of time where I was just actually doing proprietary outreach, right? Like reaching out to potential sellers with me as the buyer and trying to acquire their company. And it took me so long because I was in a very specific industry at a very specific time, and I was kind of cherry picking who I reached out to. Still looked at hundreds of deals, talked with hundreds of companies, and really talked with, I don't know, a dozen or 2 dozen very seriously, made offers, etc. Here's the thing: the companies that were really interested in talking to me versus the ones that weren't really interested in discussing a potential sale at that time. When I really look back and start to unpack what were the characteristics about the companies that were willing to talk right now when I called them out of nowhere, is simply the fact that they really had less of a footing than the companies that weren't interested, okay? For example, I called a company that they had started, they had built a great infrastructure, they had got some initial product market fit, and their growth had kind of stalled out, okay? And then at another time, I talked with someone who actually was in a cash crunch and had a bit of a distressed position and was looking for a bit of a bailout. Okay. I also talked with a printing company that had lost some major customers and was already in a declining industry and sort of ready to talk, that day, kind of a thing. But when I looked at the companies that I reached out to and said, hey, are you interested in having a conversation? There's something else that differentiated them. Their growth patterns were all up. Their founders were typically younger, or they had their succession plan already sort of figured out, right? In other words, a lot of times we're trying to figure out when's the right time to approach a seller, and the truth is there's no way to possibly know that, right? So the thing is that I want you to understand, most business owners today don't know how to even start thinking about going about selling their business, okay? And when they realize it's an option, okay, it's usually one of two things. They sort of are, talking with friends or heard about someone who had an exit, or they're starting to get tired and they start to search for it on the internet. They talk to their CPA is a big one. And ultimately they find someone like me who's going to be able to give them a valuation for their company, right? And then they have one of these 3 reactions. One of these that's like, you know what, if someone gave me that number right now, I think I'd go ahead and move forward with that. I had a call like that in the last 30 days. I told them $25 million, and then they changed their mind and said, no, we want a little more, we're gonna keep working. Fine. I talked with someone else who, I told him $3.5 million, he's ready to go, right? So it's one of these things where the number almost means nothing. There's no way to even know. You can buy a really small company, and you can get turned down by really big companies. Mark Zuckerberg turned down a $1 billion offer from Yahoo. Why? Was it because he wasn't distressed? He was less than 24 months old and someone offered him $1 billion. Put yourself in those shoes, okay? Sure, it's Facebook. We know what he was doing with it. He was 22 years old. The company was less than 2 years old. at the time. It was only generating about 20 million in revenue at that time, okay? But he said, no. Why? Why on earth do you turn down $1 billion? It's because you're not ready. You're not ready. And the thing is that entrepreneurs who run businesses, we know that we have something that's of value, right? And the thing is I want you to think about that first time that you realized that you could buy a company generating $1 million in revenue, and you could buy it for 3 years worth of earnings, or 2.5, or 2. Okay, maybe you have to pay 3.5 for a really strong one, or if it's $1 million in earnings, now you're looking at maybe paying a 4 times or a little bit more. Okay, $1 million. Okay, seems like a really it's risky, and that's why that these properties are trading at so little. But again, we've got plenty of models in buy then build to work through that. The point is that on the buy side, when you start to realize okay, this is actually very doable. Okay, on the sell side, it's slightly the opposite. It's, wait a minute, I built this company for 20 years. I put all of my kids through college. I've paid myself a nice salary. I've supported my employees and created a good livelihood for them. I've helped my customers. And now someone like Walker is going to come along and wants to give me 3 years of earnings, and I'm just going to walk away. How does that sound? To most people, it doesn't sound that appealing, okay? Unless there's a reason why it's time for them to sell, okay? I was teaching at WashU yesterday, and a student said, almost as a matter of fact, someone's only going to sell if they're in a point of distress. I strongly disagree with that comment, but it is one category, okay? There's, I think, the 5 Ds. It's death, disease, drugs, divorce, something else. And the point is I need to learn those, I know. But the point is that a lot of times, buyers are looking for people in that situation because they don't have to worry about why it is that they're selling. Think of it for a moment, though, on the other hand. The more common thing that I see from a non-baby boomer seller is they've created something of value. They've created something from scratch, and they basically have decided that they kind of want to move on with their life and do something different. A lot of times people are really, really good at building something from scratch and building it to that, $1 million mark in revenue or something like that. And they can do it relatively quickly. And they know that they've built value. They want that stripe on their sleeve of having an exit, right? Being a successful entrepreneur doesn't really happen until you've had that exit, right? And 50% of the financial gain that you have being an entrepreneur and owning a business comes on that day that you sell it. So again, when it comes to the seller's journey, the first thing that happens is they sort of learn that they can sell their company. Then they sort of figure out who they need to talk to. Then they sort of learn that their business is going to sell between 2 and 4 years worth of earnings. And then they have to sort of take that information, continue on operating the business until a point in time where one of 2 things happens. 1, it's the strategic time for them to exit. 2, it's the 5 Ds, or 3, they really just want to spend their time doing something else, okay? That's it. And when you come in order to buy that company, okay, don't think about this in terms of, you're an investor and you're expecting them to sort of, pitch you their company. It's the other way around. You are interviewing to be CEO of their company, okay? You need to sell them that you're the right person to carry their legacy. You are the person that's going to not only give them this little buyout compared to probably the spectrum of their career, but also the person that's going to carry their name and their values with their employees and their customers forever, okay? Well, for as long as you own the company, right? So there's a lot going on in terms of legacy. There's a lot going on in terms of the personal goals of the seller. There's a lot going on in the financial goals of the seller, okay? And so, but the big thing happens, this big moment where a business owner or entrepreneur really decides that it's okay and it's time to sell their business, is usually because of a change in a personal goal, what it is they want to spend their time doing. And that's usually the trigger that launches all of these other things that they've learned, okay? Hope you enjoyed this. If you are interested in buying a company in the next 12 months at the Acquisition Lab, we have world-class education. We have a vetted and very strong community. We've got an extensive suite of tools, and ongoing coaching currently at 4 days a week. Hope you're great. Feel free to apply and check us out at acquisitionlab.com. Thanks.